Hello internet people, welcome to another edition of the Broken Box Gamer. Today I'll be looking at a board game of sorts. That's a worker placement game. It's a popular franchise. It's based on an app, though the app isn't, it's not really my cup of tea. It's very clicky and loot boxy or surprise mechanic-y. But I think the board game, it's a lot better. And I think it gets overlooked a lot because of the app. I know there's a lot of people that have already done videos and already done reviews of this board game that think the same thing. And yeah, I'm on board with that train of thought. It's very easy to dismiss this game because of the app, but it's a lot deeper. There's a lot more going on, and for me personally, it's a lot more fun. Mind the tea. This is Fallout Shelter. It's a wonderful little worker placement game. A lot of art is 100% inspired by the app, and there's a lot on there that fans of the franchise will recognise. But for me, it's a wonderful little game, and I'm really excited to get to the table. Let's have a look at it.
Resource trackers, resource cubes, room cards, item cards, elevator cards, threats cards, six-sided dice, vault dwellers, happiness tokens, first player token. So the first thing you do when setting up Fallout Shelter is to lay out the starter areas. These are helpfully numbered 2 to 12. These numbers also come into play when assessing and placing threats. More on that later. Next, place 3 item cards next to the shuffled item deck to create the item supply. Then place a shuffled deck of threat cards nearby. Finally, place 3 room cards out in a similar way you did the item cards to create the room supply. You can purchase cards from this supply later on in the game, as long as you replace any that you do purchase from the room deck. Sorted. Once the cards have been set up, each player takes 1 resource tracker and 2 dwellers of their chosen colour. We're using yellow and blue. The player to go first will also gain the first player token. This gets passed to the next player at the end of each round. With setup complete, your play area might look something like this. Be sure to check your rooms are numbered in the correct order, going from 2 to 12. A standard round of Fallout Shelter takes place over 3 phases. The first of these is the threat phase, but you ignore this on the first round and continue to phase 2, which is dweller placement. Starting with the first player, take turns placing dwellers one at a time on any room space in the vault or wasteland, allowing you to acquire whatever resources that space dictates. For example, the yellow player is going to place their first dweller here in the water treatment room, so they can gain 1 water resource during the recall phase. Blue is going to place their first dweller in the diner, so that they can gather 2 units of food. Back to yellow, they're going to take advantage of the opportunity to gain 2 resources of power and place their dweller on the dual power space in the power generator room. Blue has decided they're going to level up their dweller, the blank arrow giving you a freedom to choose which level your dweller can specialise in for the next round. With all dwellers placed, that's the end of the phase, and we can continue to the recall phase. The final phase, or the recall phase, is where you recall all dwellers and gather any resources your dwellers were assigned to collect. In the case of yellow, they gain 1 water and 2 power resources. So they recall their dwellers, then place their acquired resources in the appropriate tracker spaces. On the next round, yellow can use these gathered resources to purchase new rooms, or in some case, gives them the ability to use others if they wish. Next, blue recalls their dwellers, once again assigning their acquired resources to the appropriate spaces on their resource tracker. In this case, it was 2 food. Let's look at rooms more closely. The first piece of information you need to know is what that room does. In the case of the Nuka-Cola bottler, it allows you to collect 2 food and 1 water when assigning a dweller to the left-hand slot. If on the previous round you had the foresight to train your worker in a certain skill, in this case E for endurance, you will gain double of the standard resources for that space. Of course, once the worker has occupied one side of the room, another player can always join them, gaining whatever resources the free space allows. They're once again using a trained dweller to their advantage if they have one. Certain rooms will have 2 places for dwellers to be assigned, such as is the case with the living quarters. Here you have to assign 2 dwellers, as well as using up a food resource, in order to gain another dweller. Something to be said for whining and dining, I suppose, and they say chivalry is dead. The next piece of important information to consider is that room's cost when opting to build a room. This is listed in the lower right corner of any potential room you wish to build. In the case of the Nuka-Cola bottler, this cost is 1 water, 1 food, and 3 power resources. The final thing to take note of is when certain rooms have an upfront cost in order to use them. In the case of the radio station, this is either paying 2 or 3 food to recruit a new dweller. So, we pay 2 food, assign a dweller, and then collect this new dweller during the recall phase. At the beginning of the second round, and for every subsequent round after that, you check each level of the vault to see if there are any sneaky monsters that have somehow managed to make their way into the vault. Let's take a quick look at threat cards. The information on a threat card, like the room cards, is reasonably straightforward and easy to understand. The first thing is the name of the monster or threat. In this case, it's the Molerats. The next piece of information to look at is how to defeat this threat. For the Molerats, this is done by rolling the threat dice and getting a result equal to or higher than 6 for a success. If you manage this, collect 1 happiness, or double if your dweller fighting the Molerats was trained in S or strength. Failure will result in an injured dweller. More on that later. Now that we've looked at and discussed the threat cards, let's find out where this particular threat is going. To do this, you simply roll the dice and count at the pips, placing the enemy in the corresponding room number. Rolls of a 7 means no threats are placed this time, as does a room roll that already contains a threat. In this case, I roll a 9. You do this for the base level and for each player's level. So let's place our Molerats in room 9. Going from left to right, room 9. The Molerats are placed here. That room is still usable, just not that space. If on your turn you decide to liberate a room of a certain threat, assign a dweller and roll the dice. I rolled a 10. These Molerats are toast. As a reward, collect happiness as stated at the top of the threat card. If, however, the attack is not successful, your dweller becomes injured. Let's find out how to get this dweller back on their feet. Injuries can be sustained via battle loss or by meeting the demands of a certain room, such as in the game room. Here you can see you would need to injure a dweller in order to gain a happiness. Thankfully though, not all gaming is bad for your health. Injured dwellers cannot be assigned to any other task other than to heal. You do this by placing them lying down either in the med bay or in the base level elevator. When it comes to the recall phase, reclaim your freshly healed dweller, who's now ready to be assigned a task on your next turn. One of the main goals in Fallout Shelter is to build 6 rooms in order to bring about the final scoring phase. You build rooms by assigning 1 worker to your elevator. Like so. This will gain you 2 happiness and allow you to build and expand your designated floor in the vault. In order to build a room, you take a look at the room supply track, choose the room you like, and pay the cost. Yellow has decided they wish to build a Nuka-Cola bottler. This will allow them to gain 2 food and a water if a dweller gets assigned there. The cost of the bottler is 1 water, 1 food, and 3 power. Take the needed resource cubes from your resource tracker and return them to the supply. Once purchase is complete, place the room on either side of or adjacent to the elevator, with a maximum of 3 rooms either side. Done. Let's quickly talk about the question marks. These can be seen either as a purchase cost or as a reward, as seen here next to the L. Question marks simply mean you pay or gain one of a resource of your choosing. For building the game room, for example, this particular cost is for whatever you want to pay, plus 1 power. With a dweller assigned, you'll gain a resource of your choice, and your dweller will become trained in L, or luck. If another player decides at any point that they wish to benefit from one of your built rooms, they have to pay you a resource of your choosing from the supply. However, you cannot gain this resource if they are confronting a threat in your room. In this example, Blue wishes to use the Nuka-Cola bottler so they can take advantage of the 2 food and 1 water. So they place their dweller, and Yellow will gain a resource and place it in their resource tracker. Let's take a look at the item track. In order to gain an item from here, you need to assign a dweller to a space containing this gift symbol. If you pay 1 water, you can use this particular space, assigning a dweller and gaining a gift of your choice from the track when it comes to the recall phase. Next, take note of this recycle symbol at the top here. This means if you pay 2 water to allow you to assign a dweller, you should reshuffle the items and then gain 1 of the freshly placed ones. Right, here we are then. Let's go for this one, the Maine Coon. If you exhaust this card on your turn by turning the card on its side, as is the case with many other games using a similar mechanic, you can essentially swap one item for another. Some cards allow you to gain happiness bonuses at the end of the game, as is the case with this gold watch, gaining you 1 happiness for every 2 resource cubes of food you have at the end of the last round. It's always worth keeping these cards in mind if you think things are pretty close score-wise. You never know when you might benefit from the extra happiness or 2, or 3. And this final item, the legendary mini nuke launcher that is the Fat Man, exhausts this card to gain a reroll. Definitely a handy weapon to have, this one. As you can see, it's got a reroll symbol with 2 dice. Pretty self-explanatory, really. And that is Fallout Shelter. Assign dwellers, recruit new ones, gain resources, build rooms, defend the vault from threats, and do what you can to survive a nuclear apocalypse underground. The way to actually win Fallout Shelter, as I've mentioned, is to simply have more happiness at the end of the game than the other players. The game end is brought about by either running out of threats to place, or when the 6th room on a player's floor has been built. Once that's been done, tally all the points and bonuses you received from whatever item card you acquired during the game, and whoever is the happiest Vault Overseer at the end of it all is declared the winner. In the event of a tie, count up the resource cubes, the number of dwellers you have recruited, and the items too. Still got a tie? Well, in that case, you're both winners. Well done. Or, if you hate ties and simply must declare a winner, just flip a coin, I suppose.
And that's Fallout Shelter from Fantasy Flight Games and technically Bethesda, I suppose. Like I say, it's very good fun. Those who like the app will also enjoy the game. Those who don't like the app, well, you'll enjoy the game too. The other thing I like about it is the tin. I think that's a wonderful touch. It's not going to get much in the way of wear and tear on that one. And it's definitely going to look after the game. I think Mr. Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower, he said he didn't particularly like the tin. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Like I say, I think it's a nice touch. And for me, it was going a little extra mile. The other thing I like about it are the components. The individual dwellers have all got their own little poses. And that's also ripped straight from the game Fallout or the Fallout series and Fallout Shelter. Another nice little touch. And that's what this is. It's a little board game full of nice touches. And it's a joy to play. For my next game, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do as per usual. I'm thinking I might do another older one. Like I said, I know my little boy wants to do one as well. And I don't know, I'm sure I'll pick something. I'll probably go through the top 10 list I did with my boys and maybe pull out one of those. I did have a request. I'll see if I can get that done as well. And yeah, if you like the video, like, subscribe. Feel free to comment, drop me a message, whatever you want to do. And yeah, see you next time. Until then, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Oh my god. Ciao.